Welcome, welcome. Let's start. I don't know, we're missing few people though, but let's hope it's gonna make them arrive. Thank you. I hope you had a good lunch. I've heard it was very good, so I'm happy about that. This afternoon is our last afternoon, so that's the moment where everything comes together. And you've been working hard this morning. And what we now need to do is that all the activity that you've been thinking about in your isolated table, we bring those ideas back to the full group. So we want to spend a bit of time just hearing from all the groups and the different sub-activities, just some nuggets about what they are planning to propose and some concrete action that they want to propose as a follow-up to what has been done. Is that okay? Are you all prepared? Yeah. Thank you. Andy's prepared. Who's prepared? Leonard's prepared. Wonderful. So you won't have a choice. So I'm gonna ask the group. We're gonna start with the group who has worked on network, if that's okay, to come here. So I hope we have 3 presenters. And please join us here and tell us a little bit of what you've been working on. So who's coming to the front? You want to stay all together, but we need 3 representatives, please.
Come on, guys.
Allez.
Hey, who's going to stand? There we go. Thank you, thank you.
Can we give them some applause to give them some energy?
Yeah, we need
because they are the beginners. Wonderful.
Right, 1, 2, 3. Perfect.
Okay, so I'm just gonna hand that over to you. So what we would like to know is what have you been selecting as key activities for the community, and what are you proposing as a next step?
Hello, everybody. I'm starting off. So we had a lot of activities that we actually put down and then decided to figure out if we could also cluster them a little bit to provide us with more of a framework on where to start even. So as you can see on kind of this graph, we made a V shape for some reason. And then decided to focus on 3 and actually 4 of those clustering groups and see which activities there might be of most of the priority. And maybe to say for the networking we came up with kind of looking out into what kind of vision or value proposition we would need to build strong and sustainable networks. What is the outreach strategy and communication and linkages? How do we set up a good governance mechanism? And steer kind of the operations of networks. And then maybe the most important question regarding resources and also funding, where we came back from all the 3 groups that I first mentioned to see which kind of resources and funding do we need for all of these activities.
So very specifically on the vision and value proposition, we felt that, I don't remember all the activities, we've got about 8 activities, but basically when we get the write-up from this event, then we call for volunteers to start to put together the vision value proposition. We end up with a small group, hopefully, of eager volunteers who are going to shape a draft, and then it comes back to the collective and then gets finalized. I mean, I'm cutting a few things out, I'm sure, but that's the basic process. But we wanted to be very inclusive of this group. Also, people perhaps who couldn't attend this organization but are interested as well, to come up with a very compelling value proposition for why we should be continuing this community and what it aims to achieve and what success looks like.
Yes, then coming back maybe on the governance, so we chose that because, of course, for a network to function, at least from kind of the starting stages, you need people behind that to really steer it in a direction that works for everybody that is part of that network. So I think maybe to come to the 3 action points, we have some great examples here of networks that already exist in the room. For example, the Agile community, the Diaska network, and so forth. And I think for the next 3 months, concrete actions that we want to take is really go deeper in how we could connect these networks, how do we enable a lot more exchange, and then also, now I have to look, yeah, kind of get better the feedback of the members that already are part of those networks. So I think it's often that, you know, there's a governance maybe set up, and we try to steer the network in one direction, but it's also important to get feedback from the members on what is actually necessary. And I think lots of the things that my colleagues will also mention play a part of that to summarize the governance activities.
All right, and the third activity here is for outreach. That after we're done here, how do we keep things going? But to help us do this work, we decided to do some kind of a conceptualization to understand what the room looks like, what the network looks like. And we came up with what we call the network of networks, kind of, because every network in here has other networks that they're working with and all of that. So we mapped that out, at least conceptually for now. But then the ultimate thing we'd want to come up with is an implementable outreach strategy. And to get there, we identified 4 main things. One is that we're going to map the actors within these networks. So the first 3 months, that's one thing to do. And then the second one is to conduct an assessment of needs of the actors within the networks, and to know what are the resource needs, the skill gaps, the knowledge gaps, and all of these things. And with the mapping, we want to understand the actor profiles, existing assets that different actors have, and then the understanding to understand potential synergies and collective to build a collective pool of resources. Once we're done with all these things, then we anticipate after the 3 months, it's not within the 3 months, possibly to do an analysis of the political economic dynamics to understand what the motivations and incentives for the different actors are. That is to help us identify what opportunities exist, to do a good connection, within a space. And then ultimately that will lead us to the development of an outreach and engagement strategy. And that specifically, we have these specific items or sub-items as to establish a participatory mechanism to maintain coherence in communications amongst the networks, to build our common body of knowledge, what everyone is doing, and to identify collaborative spaces and platforms for engagement, and then develop internal and external engagement objectives and mechanisms. These then feed into the strategy that we'll be working, developing. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have time for one more thing. 2 things to mention. We actually did 4, but the 4th one was very brief. But of course, this isn't going to work without resources, even a very modest way. We can't rely entirely on voluntary efforts. There's real costs that are going to have to be incurred. So the 4th one was around the resources and the funding. Where's that going to come from? And we thought we would start with the existing commitments from Gates Foundation, from GIZ, and so on, and then look at what these, let's say, minimum viable pathway forward for at least the next couple of years might look like, and then what are the gaps, and then who might be interested, other funders, other partners coming in and providing some support, and then linking that to the communications piece to start to move that forward. So we need a budget, obviously, but the budget needs to be for specific activities, for specific initiatives. We know funding is scarce, so minimum viable is possible. And then the last thing just to mention is that one of the things that we think is really important for establishing the community is having working groups or thematic groups of different kinds that are actually producing real results and real evidence of the fact that this is worth doing and worth investing in. We didn't discuss that in any detail because we assumed that the guys who are talking about the projects are going to come up with a lot of that content. So we're eagerly waiting to see what you came up with.
Brilliant. Big round of applause, please, ladies and gentlemen. Big round of applause.
Maybe we carry on with the group that has been working around projects on sort of that create traction on the ground. It was pretty challenging to start off with 32 people to kind of boil down within an hour on a list of 4 priorities, but we somehow managed, and we eventually came up with 4 really specific projects on the ground that we would like to take forward. Essentially, we have here an easy win, which is around, and we're going to present the 4. I'm going to invite the 4, but just by way of introduction, something around a suite on deforestation tools, something around an AI tool that engages farmers, not providing content to them, but bringing content from farmers into the system. The idea of a farmer data wallet or hub, and then something like a code of conduct on that would guide project design and implementation. I would like to invite the 4 representatives of those 4 groups to briefly come and talk about it. There were a few additional ones. Happy for you to come and look at them. Some incremental projects more in that lower zone, which obviously nothing is in the way to also get going with these. But sort of as part of the roadmap, we have 4. Would you like to start?
Yeah, and it happens to be number 1, so I'll start. Yes, so our group was working on the farmer-led AI engagement tool for farmer advisory services, but also developing an Agile Data farmer feedback mechanism or guide. So these basically actually talk to each other, and so the title of our project is Farmer-Centric Interactive AI System. In terms of the objective, one is to promote, to provide real-time feedback to farmers. And then secondly, we're looking at getting the demand-driven farmer solutions. So we're looking at not just, sitting in this room and coming up with projects, but let's go and talk to farmers. Let's understand what their problems are, and then we develop projects based on that. So that's where the demand-driven is coming in. And then we need to also build trust with the farmers, which has been lost over time from collection of data. Of course, we collect data from time to time, and we never get back to them with any feedback. So we need to build that kind of trust going forward. And we just want to get a holistic view of farmer pain points, which can actually, make farmers be part of the whole process. To the activities. Thank you. So, activities. Within the next 3 months, if we are starting today, we came up with, I think, 4, if not 5 activities. Number 1 is that we need to identify existing solutions within the space and see if we can replicate or we can improve on the same. And then we also need to develop a prototype for machine learning model. And then we'll also be coming up with an inventory of the feedback mechanisms that are also currently in use, and also see if we can improve any. And we actually spent some time on this one to say the feedback can also be inbuilt in the machine learning and AI, where when we collect data, we generate our reports, we can also command AI to send feedback to farmers. And then we shall also have a consultative meeting basically just an engagement process with all the necessary stakeholders on the same table to make sure that we have the same understanding and we define the scope and idea refinement. So those are the key activities for the next 3 months. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Obviously, there's much more detail, but I've been forcing you to skip all the...
2 minutes.
Thank you very much for giving us an idea of what you envision happening. Jerome?
All right, so we realized that in the last couple of days, we've been talking a lot about solutions, governance, underlying principles, but we haven't so much talked about the problems that we'd like to address with these solutions. So we in the project group thought about the following problem statement, that we have rising deforestation and there is a regulation that is trying to halt that, the EODR, but we need solutions to ensure EODR compliance. So our idea was to actually think about a DPI ecosystem for zero deforestation. What are we going to do exactly? Our proposal is to design pilots that are taking the existing DPI building blocks that GIZ and ITC and FO have been developing over the last couple of years and make them as interoperable as possible and implement them as one ecosystem, as one approach in a specific country case to show that, first of all, the solutions work. The data sets are not only informing EODR compliance, but can also be valuable beyond compliance, and also show that we can convene stakeholders together for a common DPI effort. And to achieve that, we identified 4 action points for the next 3 months. Perhaps slightly ambitious, but it's always good to have ambitions. So the first one would be to sort of scope, to do a scoping of all the different geographies and activities and building blocks that are already being implemented by development partners and implementers and service providers, to then basically identify what the technological foundations are and how to adapt them, to use them as one DPI ecosystem, then to also think about sustainable funding models. So this DPI ecosystem for zero deforestation is not going to die after the project cycle, but will survive afterwards. And then lastly, kind of for these pilots, we need champion leaders in the supply chains that are really, promoting and standing behind it. And ideally, that would be a consortium of different actors that are involved in the supply chain, from farmers to, traders to other service providers. So that would be our proposal. And I think we've got a good timeline and we've got some drive in our teams to push it forward.
Great. Thank you very much.
So last but not least, one of the activities that we identified as well was to develop a code of conduct for ethical DPI. So the objective around this is to ensure that any DPI built does no harm, or to ensure that there are adequate guardrails as people proceed with developing DPI solutions. So I won't speak too much on that and maybe just go straight to the activities that the actions rather that we identified. The first thing we thought to do was a systematic review around what exists, what's been done elsewhere in other regions, etc. And also conduct key informant interviews across certain countries in Africa that we would identify. And then we would identify a specific country to develop this code of conduct via a minimum viable product approach. And as part of doing that, we would also identify champions within that country who would serve to guide this process. And then last but not least, we would have a series of convenings or workshops to develop the content of the code of conduct.
Wonderful, thank you. We had a 4th group working on the data wallet or data hub. Would you like to present that here, or would you like people to read up on that later? Someone from... Who has been working on this one here? I think I saw people working on it, so somehow they seem to suddenly have either disappeared or being shy, or... Anyway.
No, we need to go on. Lars, are you coming? Lars.
I've never seen you that shy.
I'm shy. I'm not prepared. So we were thinking about, where was it? So farmer data wallets, with the objective to get better access to specific services for farmers based on data wallets they have. Here we go. To build sustainable farming practice, better access to services in order to increase resilience and productivity. Services like access to markets, inputs, climate predictions, etc. But then also have data wallets for farmers that are of course fed in an agile manner, and that could be passed on to with permission to different service providers, but also to buyers to inform due diligence, and that would all be in a shared data space. I think there's a high potential to link it with the DPI for zero deforestation. Lots of stakeholders involved, and we have come up with a couple of recommended actions. I mean, there are a lot of things that would still need to be defined. We haven't agreed on a specific use case. I think we would need to kind of define the exact scope, adaptation and alignment, etc. And then also we had a long discussion around AI, whether AI can help, whether AI is good or not. But I think there was a consensus that we'll be looking into incorporating AI as an add-on to make more sense of the data, if that makes sense. But please, anybody who wants to step in.
Wonderful, thank you. So that's on the project side, and I hand over to Leonhard to share around tools and enabling tech.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much. Oh, I got two mics, so I can.
You got two.
Wonderful. So when we talk about tools and enabling tech, I mean, we kind of clustered it into apps for farmers, and there's certainly some overlap with this group over here. And then maps and geodata is one of the big ones. We tried to really simplify the buckets within the buckets. One was on training, and the last one was on enabling environment. That's where we also have a touch point to the previous group, because one of them, you mentioned the code of conduct, ethics and DPI. We also have a code of conduct on data democracy. So maybe group come to the stage here, the big one. We also want that synchronized clapping. Can you do that again? That was synchronized, yeah. And Jonas, you're also in that one. Oh, that's wonderful. I love that. That's enough, guys. Hold your applause. Do you want to get started on the code of conduct?
Yes. So our group looked at enabling environments for digital technology, I think, writ large. And we couldn't narrow it down to one, and we didn't want to get into a fist fight. So the first of those is digital infrastructure expansion to ensure inclusion. Basically, it's ensuring farmer connectivity and inclusion by expanding digital infrastructure in rural and remote areas, and the access to electricity. So that kind of speaks largely to what it's about, and pretty understandable. But in terms of activities, we map them out on a 36-month timeline for things to do, but they start with specific activities around creating a project lead, identifying target organizations and participants, building a task force, and then having that task force begin building what we should call the Victoria Falls Accord, which is a commitment to expanding infrastructure and access to connectivity right around the world. Followed in the months and years by stakeholder consultations, draft key accord elements, validate those elements, and then a demonstrated commitment by countries through a signing through the Victoria Falls Accord. And then there's a couple of how do you implement that? Who are your champions or stewards of those of that commitment? And then implementing those and planning within countries, some funding and infrastructure implementation. So that was activity one, activity one. Activity 2 is much like the previous group is a code of conduct, so I'm seeing some synergy that could mean we can actually unify those in a single piece, but this was a code of conduct for data democracy. The objective is to create a global standard and a recognition mechanism that ensures technology suppliers adhere to best practices, ultimately enforcing farmers' trust. So it is developing standards around data democracy and a commitment to sharing core producer data to a public infrastructure. Right? So not all of your data, but I think we have to be realistic about DPIs and allow opportunity for innovations to scale outside of that, so individual businesses scaling technology in the ag space, but with a commitment to commit to the public infrastructure. So, and create a mechanism for companies to be recognized for compliance or adherence. Nobody likes compliance with those standards. So like something of a certification process. The goal of that being it takes the onus and the workload off of farmers and stakeholders themselves to ensure that those who they're doing business with adhere to good data democracy and ensuring that they'll have a commitment to share that, putting the onus on the tech suppliers and service providers to say, yes, if you sign with us, we agree to these standards, and it makes it easy to recognize. So in terms of activities related to that one, sorry, again, long list, but again, project lead, and identifying target participants, so a coalition of the willing, if you will, and then convening that group to start building standards and ensuring that we have the right stakeholders at the table, primarily farmers, or at least at its core and foundation farmers, to select what core data should be predetermined that can be shareable, so maybe not business data, but certainly farm identification information. Agree to the data democracy elements and validate those standards, then determine a mechanism for compliance adherence or certification, then find our champions within government and tech companies, those that say this is a good policy, this creates the trust that we talked about yesterday, that's required that has to be moved from sentiment to operation, and then a really committed goal to communications, awareness, and promotion amongst farmers and industry.
Thank you very much. Maybe just a quick follow-up question on that also to the audience. First of all, you see potential to merge it with the others on the ethics and DPI?
Yep, potentially.
Where are they going? You guys want to merge?
This was a code of conduct on DPI.
Yeah. You up for that? That's a merger, nice. But maybe also check in the audience just briefly, who's up for working on that code of conduct, both in data democracy, because that was a big topic over the course of the 3 days now, and ethics and DPI. Hands up. So there are a few people. That's nice.
And I think we need to expand the scope beyond this room because
yeah,
there's
for sure.
just a great community that can be part of that coalition of the willing.
But it's good to have an initial buy-in maybe,
Absolutely.
and then you guys reach out to you, right, to see what, I mean, you have a long list of next steps.
I'm not leading. I'm not leading.
You're not leading. Well, then we merge with the others. They are leading it.
Okay.
Yeah, but at least we need to get the ball rolling and then see who will be leading that. All right, thank you very much. Over to you guys.
Thank you. So our activity title is another task force. It's the interoperability task force, and I was promised to have a QR code shown there, so please, dear organizers, can you please put it up there? I think you cannot see it, right? Let me move this for you. Hard working.
That's fine, that's fine. You go.
Thanks. All right, so there's already a lot of solutions out there that have interoperability baked into them, yet a lot of the interoperability links are not established yet. So our activity objective in the interoperability task force is to link up the different systems through testing the existing interoperability solutions, that is mainly through APIs. Those of you who know what an API is, can you please lift your hands? Oh, that's quite a lot. I mean, that's to expect it at a summit like this. Anyway, the description is pretty simple and straightforward. We need to find the people and to coordinate them. So I would like you to scan that QR code, give us your email address so we can set up the interoperability task force. Another activity description I have is to document the solutions well. Well, in terms of the WISP API, we already have that. Nonetheless, the uptake is still so we would like to get the techies into a call together and just guide them through it for like an hour or something. Because if you see it right there, also with our API developers showing how it works, it'll be just much simpler to also integrate it in your own solution. We want to involve everybody. Buyers, government representatives, developers, NGOs, and the whole Diasca platform, which is like 800 people already, but we are targeting especially the techies, and if possible also the decision makers, but please, all the tech people out there, register. The QR code is there. Once again, take out your phones.
I saw some phones up. First of all, thanks a lot, Jonas. Maybe do a quick check. Who would be up for that? Maybe not you yourself, but then somebody from the team who's more on the tech side. Do you see that as something? Costing?
Awesome.
Few ones. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jonas.
All right. Let me just finish this. The resources we need are your time and brains. Pretty straightforward. And, well, yeah. Okay, that's it. It's your turn.
All right, I'm going to be a little bit cliche and start with a story. Don't worry, it will be quick. So yesterday afternoon, after a session that we had about deciding what data we needed in order to make these systems work, I had a wonderful conversation with Martha, one of our farmers who came here, where we realized between the two of us that we were speaking different languages. She is an expert farmer. She has her terminology, how she thinks about things. I wouldn't call myself a data expert, but I'm a data person, right? I know about terms like DPI, Agile Data, what that means, and what we mean when we say things like interoperability, et cetera. But once we were able to come up with a shared language together, and we had to draw a lot of pictures and make sure we both understood, we were able to start having really meaningful conversations about things like digital wallets, about things like, what if you have an actual card? What if you lose it? How do you know? Actually get into the details of things based in Martha's and my experience. And so out of this, Martha and I both have a bit of an education background. We were like, is there some sort of shared curriculum or knowledge base that we could build so that we can all understand each other? And what came out of it was a tiny bit different. But essentially, what we ended up asking ourselves is, what does it really actually mean for design to be farmer-centered? I notice, at least in my field, it's very common to say, okay, we'll go consult with this group, and then we'll go back among ourselves, talk about it, and then we'll bring something back to them. How do we involve them in the entire design process? Because otherwise we risk duplicating the same systems that already have us all very siloed. So with that background, you'll notice these points aren't particularly original. Everyone has sort of the same thing. Okay, first we need a landscape analysis. Then we need to centralize our knowledge. Then we need a plan of action. Then we need to disseminate our knowledge. But let me get into a tiny bit more detail about each of these and what this actually looks like if it's farmer-centered. For the landscape analysis, just me and Martha having our conversation, we each have our own experiences. We figured it out. We managed to have a productive conversation between the two of us. There are folks like Amma at Opportunity International who already have extensive experience working directly with farmers and navigating relationships in those communities in a way that establishes trust, a shared knowledge foundation, and an ability to co-design and move things forward.
But the problem is we do not share this enough within our community. And so the issues of a lot of us doing wonderful work but siloed means that we are not able to learn not only from the success, the strengths, but also the failures that already exist within these spaces. And so for us, we said, what would it take to bring all of those different learnings into a space where now we give the farmers an opportunity to be able to understand all of the things that we say in these spaces where we know with our 4 farmers or 5 farmers represented in this room does not really go down to the ground where we want to have, for example, data democracy on all of the nice fancy terms that we have.
Yeah, and conversely, this shouldn't be well, we'll get to that in a little bit. Maybe that'll be more in the implementation side of things. But exactly, and it's not just a landscape analysis of who is already doing this work. It's a landscape analysis of all of the players involved, right? And I suppose that's not particularly original. we need to define who are farmers, because there are as many farmers and types of farmers as there are people who farm, right? I think us just saying the word farmer, and this is not my idea, I'm parroting something that Gertrude said, but like, it's similar, us just saying farmers is just as similar as me saying, okay, data and policy people. As data and policy people, we know that there are a bunch of different distinctions within that, and we all need different things, right? Farmers are incredibly diverse, like any group of people on the earth. We need to actually see them as a population of people, not as a monolith, and establish a lot more knowledge around that, including things around gender, disability, age, all of these things. We also need to basically define which terms need to be exchanged between us and mutually understood so that we can meaningfully collaborate. That's sort of the vocabulary piece. But also, like you said, what communities are already doing this work. I sense the clock running out. I'll try to go a little faster. So let's say someone does this landscape analysis, or a group of people do this landscape analysis.
A group.
Everyone's like, not me. Then we need to centralize all the knowledge that we found. And this isn't just a centralization of knowledge, like, okay, we put it all in one document, someone go read it. Like, we need a convening, I think probably similar to what we have here, where we can all meet in person and really talk about what is the core knowledge and what are the core learnings that are needed here in order to enable true farmer-centered co-design. And I think something that came up a little bit in one of the sessions was the idea of, like, do farmers need to know terms like DPI? Do farmers need to know, for example, like this very technical terminology? And I think my answer to that is, if we assume that level or that kind of knowledge is not relevant to them, we assume that they are forever going to be farmers and that they don't have other ambitions and that they don't necessarily have a seat at the same table that we all do when we are using words like DPI. And so I think this is really important. At the same time, though, we don't want to just throw a bunch of words at people. And conversely, this is a knowledge exchange. We don't want the farmers to just throw a bunch of words at us. So we need to decide what is like the useful knowledge that is mutually beneficial to know. Then we need to figure out a plan of action, ... not sure. And then a way to disseminate all of the knowledge, which is a huge thing, but that really needs to focus on like multi-channel approaches, like a lot of the folks like you're doing. How do we engage with these different communities, and how do we enable ways for them to engage back with us, the technological constraints? But let's start with who's interested. I don't know about resourcing. I don't know who exactly will be involved, but if you're interested, this is my little sales pitch. Come write down your email. I'll put us all in an email chain. We'll figure out the rest from there. Thank you.
One quick note about the interoperability task force. The QR code was apparently not readable because of this huge chunk of podium. So please do it again. Interoperability group for the win. Thank you.
And Christian, you just wanted to give a quick comment on this one.
I just wanted to say that you've inspired me enough to, I feel compelled to come here in front and remind people that we are in the decade of family farming from FAO. We have people in this room who have access to the Pan-African Farmers Organization as a ground, fertile ground for validation of what you find out here. And we have publications from World Bank, from CTA from 10 years ago, and World Bank from 8 years ago about farmer profiles and how to collect and so on. So the definitions are there. So it's just a matter of validation, and we can really push you ahead and together and work together with you and walk together with you on the journey. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. And the call to action was you have to sign up with your email address over there. So you can't just, right? So, all right. Thanks, everybody. So first of all, there was a lot of work that has been achieved here and a lot more that was going on. Big applause to all of you for sharing all the insights and the hard work. Yeah. All right.
Fantastic. So 5 minutes ago, we had 6 out of 10 reports. So we are waiting for another 4, if I'm not mistaken, but we have a solid piece of work together here. Thank you to all for really making this happening and landing this here. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Andy for getting into our last conversation round.
Thank you.
Different stakeholders.
Wow, I tell you what, I was listening to all those presentations. Please, guys, such great ideas, great things going forward. And of course, we're going to continue trying to see how we can develop them to make them real. So.